Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Gurian. I'm the executive director of the Gurian Institute, and this video log is going out onto public YouTube. I hope everyone will use it. I'm creating it specifically because I've been getting a lot of questions over the last few weeks, few months actually, and I've spoken about this before, that there are folks around, going around the country saying, wait a minute, Gurian's wrong, people like him are wrong, there is no male-female, and in fact, it's bad to talk about male-female. Everything is on a spectrum, everyone is human, there's a little bit of gender, but it's on a spectrum. There are gender differences, sex on the brain differences, no, not such a big deal. Male-female brain, no, spectrum. Most of what's important is what's socialized into males and females, and that's really what we should pay attention to. We don't really need to pay attention to male-female brain difference, and in fact, it would be bad to do that, because if we do that, it's going to harm vulnerable populations, it's going to be gender stereotyping. And we're seeing a resurgence of this kind of commentary, what is really false science, but we're seeing it. And to me, what it really translates into is gender indifference. And gender indifference is dangerous for a culture, and we've already proven that. So if you haven't heard the term gender indifference before, it's because I think I've created it, and I'm trying to bring it into the conversation. I hope you will use it to be a counterpoint to gender difference. I'm obviously one of those people who talks about sex and gender difference and has created programming with my colleagues to help systems to understand male and female brain, male and female nature, nurture, and culture. So that we're looking at the whole thing, male, female. That's looking at gender difference and integrating what is one of the biggest elements of human development. One of the 3 or 4 really massive elements of human development is the sex on the brain, so male, female. It, along with your core personality that comes in on your genetic package, as well as your body, and what illnesses you may be susceptible to. These are the 3 or 4 core elements of human development, and they are preset for sex on the brain. So gender differences are preset on the X and the Y chromosome, and they get into the brain in utero via the X and the Y chromosomes, and the male and the female brain come out different. When kids are born, their brains look different, male and female. So this has been proven over the last 40 years or so. These scans started in the 80s, and nearly all of the scientists who work in the gender neuroscience field, they have these scans, they do these scans. These scans are out, you can find them on the internet. I show these scans when I speak wherever I go. Our trainers show them when they train systems like schools. But there are a few folks, there's around 10 or 15 of these folks who are gender indifferent in terms of academics going out there. They're very smart people. They have PhDs, and they'll stand right up there and say, I'm a neuroscientist, and I'm telling you, this male-female, not really. Everything's on a spectrum, and it's basically social construct. So if we're going to pay attention to anything, we should stop the people who talk about male-female brain difference. That's all stereotypes, gender stereotypes. That's bad. We don't want that. And what we should really talk about is just culture. We should be talking about the culture, because the brain all happens on a spectrum. So it's all about how the culture creates masculinity and all these things. On the surface, interesting, and yet at the same time, to my ear, having been born in the 50s and coming through all these academic systems over the last 60 years, for my ear, it sounds like a return to the second dark ages. The first dark ages is in the past, when gender indifference was used to subjugate women. The second dark ages is this dark ages we had between 30 and 50 years ago, where we decided to do something about that and change that. But the academic world posited the concept, not having science yet, posited the concept that male and female is all socialized. And since it's all socialized, it's really culture is the main thing, and nature, these things don't really matter for male-female. They matter for everything else. They matter for medicine, they matter for workplaces, they matter for everything else, but not for gender, don't matter for that. And that was the second Dark Ages. And I'm seeing in the last couple of years a kind of resuscitation or reboot of that second dark ages. And that second dark ages we started to be able to come out of because so many of the neuroscientists were able to publish peer-reviewed studies using brain scans and showing male-female brain difference and showing it across the world. And if you have not read any of my books, if you have, you'll know this already. I take research from at least 30 different countries of all races to show how X and Y chromosome create male-female brain difference. And so that's why it's robust around the world. And culture matters for a lot of things, but male-female brain difference, culture doesn't matter much for that. That's coming in on the X and the Y. So, and if you haven't read my books, just get Boys and Girls Learn Differently or Saving Our Sons or Minds of Girls, and you'll see it there. So these scientists were actually counterbalancing the kind of dark ages, what I call that academic dark ages when everything's gender is a social construct. They were coming out and saying, no, not so. And but now we're getting a reboot of this kind of second dark ages and this what I'm calling gender indifference, where folks want to be indifferent to male and female. And indifference is always dangerous. It always creates problems. And the problem that it was creating back then, that we still have a kind of evolutionary drag of that problem. A lot of systems have not been trained in male-female brain difference, so they don't know about it. So they hemorrhaged a lot of boys, like from schools. Boys are hemorrhaged out of schools. They're constantly getting in trouble. They're being medicated when they're not. They don't actually have. Some have the diagnosis, but many of them are getting false diagnoses of ADD. They don't really have it, but the schools are not trained in male brains, so they don't really know what to do. The graduate schools don't teach it. And we've been fighting against that kind of academic dark ages. We've been fighting against it by using scans and by teaching male-female brain difference over the last 20 years. And in our work, we have pilot studies that show it and strategies and whole year-long programs in which schools go from a dark ages of not knowing any of it all the way through to enlightenment. And seeing the scans, which are light in our brains, in our heads, and people being blown away, parents, teachers, counselors, blown away by how different the male brain looks when from the female brain when you sit in a chair in a counseling office. Those brains look different. We got to do counseling a little different for those brains. Teaching, male and female brain look different when they're sitting in a chair listening to a teacher. Male-female brain look different when they're in a workplace. So male-female brain difference is robust and it's profound. And we have shown, if you go to graininstitute.com, you'll see the success page and you'll see the success of these schools, how grades rise for both boys and girls and for everyone on the spectrum. Because we want to remember, everything is on a spectrum. But we're teaching the male-female brain difference part, and that's the part that has the profound effect on the systems. Saying everything's on a spectrum is neat, but it doesn't really have a profound effect on the misdiagnosis of ADD among these boys, or the underdiagnosis of ADD among girls, or the issues girls are having with technology and engineering, the issues boys have with behavior and always getting sent to the principal. Just saying it's all on a gender spectrum doesn't really change that stuff. But understanding this element of human development, a male-female brain difference, and gender difference, understanding that and integrating that understanding into the system creates profound change. So the danger of going back to the dark ages, the second dark ages, is that we're going to be right back into not getting training in this, and parents constantly calling the school and saying, what is going on with my boys? And we're going to have more school to prison pipeline. We're going to have more failure for girls in certain areas we want them to succeed. We're going to have more learning disorders, brain disorders among both populations that we don't fully understand, that we don't fully treat. Across the board, we're going to have more problems because we will have tried to put aside one of the 3 or 4 most profound elements of human development. So my call to action for you, if you're listening to this, viewing this, my call to action is a few steps. Step 1, call to action, is study this stuff and be a citizen scientist and get things like Boys and Girls Learn Differently. Go to graininstitute.com, look at this stuff, learn about these brain differences and learn about gender difference, so that when you go to a lecture like at your school and someone is saying, is presenting what I call the position of gender indifference, is saying, now it's all on a spectrum, you don't worry about male female so much, uh, and if you worry about male female, it's gender stereotyping anyway, and it's going to harm women, or it's going to harm trans kids. When you hear this, know that what you're hearing is false science, because you've become a citizen scientist and studied it and read these books and gone through these programs. And now call to action is you raise your hand when this person says this and makes these leaps. Like, if you use the real science, it's going to harm trans kids or gay kids. Or if you use the real science, well, it's not real science anyway, they'll say. It's false science. Know that what you're hearing is their own false science, and you can equip yourself to stand up, raise your hand, and say, and then the key thing you can say to them is, you've just given me 30 minutes of this lecture about how it's all on a spectrum, and you haven't shown me brain scans. Would you please show me the brain scans? And what I'd like to see is, I'd like to see brain scans of male and female brain from all races, so males of all races and females of all races, and I'd like to see what they look like in a rest state, or what's called a boredom state. That person is not going to show you those scans, because if that person showed you those scans, their whole lecture falls apart, because the male and the female brain in all races, in all cultures, when they're in a rest state, look quite different. Similarly, challenge them. Would you please show me brain scans of males writing a paper and females writing a paper? Can you show me those brain scans? What do the brains look like? Well, if the person had those scans, they would see that the brains look quite different. Male and female brain do verbal stuff very differently, talk about their feelings differently. That person will probably, that lecturer, that academic who's very smart but who's pushing this ideology, won't show you that, because the lecture would fall apart. So call to action one is study this, be a citizen scientist, and challenge these folks who are gender indifferent. Challenge them, and not from an extreme position, not because you want to do anyone any harm, but challenge them on behalf of the systems you're involved in, the kids you care about in those systems, and challenge them. Even though they're smart people, you are smart too. My second call to action is reach out to the Gurian Institute, Gurian Institute.com. Reach out to us, reach out to me, reach out and use these programs. Bring these programs into your schools, into your counseling systems, into your universities, into your neighborhoods, into your faith communities. We've worked in every single system, into your workplace. Bring these programs in so that everyone can get the training, which is not very expensive, but which is profound, and can get the training so they can look at their systems, and you can look at your systems, and you can foment change, positive change in your systems, and put aside this gender indifference and really go for this element of human development that's so important. And know and be resolved that there is nothing in my work or in the work of the neuroscientists who are doing the primary scans, there is nothing in our work that is this quote-unquote gender stereotypes or dangerous to girls or dangerous to trans or dangerous to LGBTQ. That is false science, that is made up. This is not where we live. This is not what we do. In fact, the real science of these brain scans, the real science is what has profoundly and positively affected the lives of vulnerable populations, LGBTQ populations, other vulnerable populations, while also taking care of everyone, because everyone, including LGBTQ people, are male and female. So we can take care of everyone by using the real science and not buying too much into the false science. So those are my two major calls of action. Get a hold of us at GurianInstitute.com and challenge the people that you're reading who are blogging and meta-analyzing and saying there's no male-female. Challenge them to show you their scans, the actual scans, and especially if they're giving a lecture at your school, challenge them. Those are my two calls to action. I hope you'll reach out, and I hope you'll help us to battle against this gender indifference, because it is perhaps the most protective way to the science of gender difference is perhaps the most protective way to heal the lives of boys and girls, to help boys and girls all across the spectrum, to help them in their systems, and to do it in a way that's science-based, so that's not stereotyping and not doing all this weird stuff that people like me are accused of by these folks. And it's the future, because science is the future. We don't want to be in the old dark ages. We don't want to be in the second dark ages. We want to be in the future, using science and technology to fully raise our kids, educate our kids, and help our kids. Please do join us. GureenInstitute.com. Thank you.